Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Pyromancer here. Thank you for coming to this video, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to get the new challenge appearance for the Destruction Warlock in the new patch 7.2 Mage Tower Artifact Challenge scenario. If you don't know, this is a solo scenario in which you have to kill a 2-target fight in order to unlock this special appearance, as you can see here. Unlike the Affliction one, legendaries don't really help you that much within this encounter, and the majority of this encounter just comes down to being situationally aware, making sure that you're timing your fears correctly, and interrupting. Aside from that, you guys, there's no other reason why there's any type of DPS check, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Alright guys, so before we actually get started on the guide part, some of you may actually need to know where you start this. So if you're not familiar, both the North American and European realms have fully established the Mage Tower on the Broken Shore at this time. So if you go to Deliverance Point on the Broken Shore, you can actually go up to the large tower, and there's an NPC standing there called War Counselor Victoria. By speaking to her, you'll have 3 new quests that you can pick up, and with these 3 new quests, you'll be able to queue for a solo scenario that will award a special challenge appearance for your artifact weapon for all of your specs if you complete it. So what's really nice, like I said, about this challenge is one of the things is it's not really as gear dependent as some of the other challenges. Now, I personally don't really have any Destruction Warlock legendaries. All of my legendaries are Affliction Warlock legendaries, and so I don't really have anything that is a massive beneficial kind of thing that I have. You know, it's all kind of, I have Pillars, I have Norganons, and none of which are really great on this fight. So my Destruction gear set is actually pretty terribly itemized, pretty low haste, really low crit, and very high mastery, which honestly doesn't really help you that much in this fight because mastery is only good in 2 target, and for the strat I'll be showing you, you're really not even going to need very much mastery because of it. And the second target that you're generally cleaving onto, for most of the fight, does have a damage reduction on them, so it's only mildly beneficial. But that being said, legendaries that I'd recommend, there really isn't any recommended legendaries. You can run pretty much whatever you want. Although, of course, having Feretory of Souls, Magistrike Restraints, Sindori's Spite, or maybe Lessons of Space-Time is going to be the most beneficial when it comes to the gear. I certainly would still recommend having the 4-piece from Nighthold if you can get your hands on it, simply because the 4-piece is so strong. And for trinkets, just Whispers in the Dark, Erratic Metronome, things like that. Like I said, it's not super gear dependent, this one. It's mostly about the interrupts. So when it comes to consumables for this challenge, it's going to be pretty straightforward. The first thing that you're going to need is Flask of the Whispered Pact in order to get that 1300 intellect. After that, you're going to want Potion of Prolonged Power. For your food, you're going to want to take a Shari Salad, which is going to give you 375 haste, of course, the best stat for destruction. And then the last thing you'll need, as with most other challenges, you're going to need the Drums of Fury. Now, this is a craftable item that gives you 25% haste for 40 seconds. It's basically like a personal lust, and I'll be showing you in the video when exactly you'll need to use this. Now, real quick before we get started, I wanted to cover a quick topic, and that is which pet should you be using, because there's a little bit of debate about what you should use. Now, I certainly am, in this guide, I'm going to recommend the Fell Hunter, because if you can just keep interrupts under control, your damage doesn't really matter. But some Warlocks, like Revan, for example, who has really good legendaries and can push the damage a little bit faster, just interrupts using the Fears that we'll talk about in the video, and uses the Imp for maximum damage to finish the encounter faster. You'll notice in the video it takes me about 6.5 minutes to kill it, but I'm just trying to play it safe and make sure that I don't get one shot. So real quick guys, let's talk about Talons. So there's a couple different talent builds you can run on this fight, but I'm going to be showing you exactly what I ran and what I believe to be the best as far as just making sure that you're getting all the interrupts and staying alive. There are of course other talents that you can take in order to push the DPS a little bit faster, and I'll talk about that briefly as well. So what you see here is what I believe to be the best setup for this fight, that is Backdraft for increased cast times, Eradication, simply because casting ELT is going to take your health away, and it's really not a good idea during this fight. You want to have your health as high as possible at any given time in case you get put into a panic situation. Mortal Coil or Shadow Fury are certainly both usable, but I prefer Mortal Coil because it's used generally to interrupt Fell Burst, which I'll show you, and because it can be casted while moving and has a 45-second cooldown, it's certainly a decent option. It'll also fear the target away, so that's also a little bit beneficial, and it heals you, so of course that's important. After that, Fire and Brimstone is certainly usable if you mess up the fear on the Earthquake, which I'm going to show you, but I generally think Soul Harvest is going to be better to push the damage a lot quicker. Cataclysm doesn't really have a place in this fight. After that, the third choice really is yours, but I don't recommend Burning Rush once again because most of the movement mechanics in this fight you can get around without a speed increase. Demon Skin is pretty weak, And then Dark Pact, I just feel like is the best option as kind of a panicky defensive cooldown that you can use in conjunction with Unending Resolve, and you'll actually see me do that in this video. For the last talent tree, I would not recommend Grimoire of Service or Sacrifice for this, as there's no real reason to use either of them. I'm sorry, Grimoire of Supremacy and Grimoire of Sacrifice. I would not recommend either of those, but Grimoire of Service is pretty solid. For the last one, you technically can take any, but I think Wreak Havoc, just for the sake of cleaving, is going to be the most beneficial. You really want the secondary target's health to be as low as possible before you push into the last phase, because he does get a damage buff in the last phase, but I'll tell you more about that. Now, if you really wanted to push the damage a little bit more, you technically could go with something like Channel Demon Fire. You technically could go with something like Roaring Blaze, but I really wouldn't recommend it, especially if you have the 4-piece from Nighthold. And like I said, ELT is a possibility, but again, I just really think the safest bet is to go with this. Alrighty guys, so let's actually get into the fight here. One of the things you'll notice when entering the room is that your space is pretty limited. I've heard of people trying to fight on the bridge or across the bridge, and I actually tried it myself and got one shot. So this general area you see me in is where you're going to want to fight the boss. You'll notice that it's a 2-target fight, one of which called Tugar Blood Totem, the other one being Jormog the Behemoth. If you notice, Jormog the Behemoth has 9 stacks of a debuff. This debuff gives him 90% damage reduction, 10% per stack, and you can break this reduction by kiting him into the stalactites that fall from the ceiling. I'll show you that here shortly. You'll want to do this periodically throughout the fight so that the damage reduction towards the end of the fight is not too high. But as far as how you start this fight, the first thing that I always do is set Jormog to my focus, because I do have a weak aura that alerts me when he's going to be casting the ability that interrupts. And I do a standard drums opener onto Tugar as soon as the fight starts, making sure that I'm just pumping as much damage out as possible. The last target you should need to worry about using this guide is the Fell Surge Totem, which you'll see here in just a couple seconds. These have 2 HP and just require 1 quick hit to kill it. If they finish their cast, though, they will one-shot you, so it's an absolute #1 priority besides interrupting Fell Burst, which is coming from Tugar. So like I said, start off by setting Jormog to your focus so you can see when he's casting Sonic Scream. Never cast an ability while this is happening, or you'll become interrupted and cast locked for about 6 seconds. This can be fatal if you get Chaos Locked, because you won't be able to cast Mortal Coil or Grimoire Fell Hunter to stop Fell Burst. Fell Burst is an ability you'll see Tugar continuously cast. It hits you for roughly 2.7 mil after your average amount of absorbs, so basically, if you don't interrupt this or use a massive personal cooldown, you die. This is where Mortal Coil, Spell Lock, and Grimoire Fell Hunter come into play. So you'll notice I kind of rotate around my interrupts between using Mortal Coil when I'm moving, using Spell Lock for my general pet, and then using Grimoire Fell Hunter in order to interrupt. Keep in mind, Grimoire Fell Hunter does require you to have 1 soul shard when you're going to use it, so I don't ever let myself generally go down to 0 shards. I always try to keep at least 1. So one thing you'll see me doing here, like I mentioned at the start of the video, is kiting that worm through these stalactites that are on the ground that fell from the ceiling. At the same time, you'll have to be switching to the Fell Burst Totem and killing those, and avoiding Sonic Scream like you see here. Generally, you'll want to move about the room in order to keep yourself kind of having a stalactite between you and the worm when it's in the ground going around. And as you can see right there, just a couple moments ago, I actually had to pop Unending Resolve and pop my Dark Pact in order to stay alive from the Fell Burst because I didn't have an interrupt with it. Sometimes the timing will line up like that. Another tip I want to give you that will save you a lot of time and trouble on this fight is Tugar is always fearable. There's nothing that stops you from fearing him. However, if you do it too many times in quick succession, just like PvP combat, they will have a DR on them and they'll stop being affected by fear. However, when he's casting Earthquake, which drops these stalactites from the ceiling and summons these adds, he is fearable. So what you want to do, you won't even see the adds in this clip because I do a good job of keeping them not spawning. But what you want to do is as soon as he starts casting Earthquake, cast Fear at him and interrupt it, and he'll start to run away, the stalactites will fall from the ceiling, and you continue the fight as normal, because if you don't, eggs will also fall from the ceiling, which will, if you don't kill them quickly enough, spawn adds that put green patches on the ground, not the ones you see here, but different ones, and it is super, super, super annoying. Another thing that you see right there is I kind of preemptively was waiting for him to cast that Fell Burst because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to interrupt it and I would have to fear it. Sometimes after you do this fight enough, you'll kind of get the feeling for it and know when he's going to cast it. So in case your haste isn't that high, or for some reason your Whispers kind of screws you and you're in the Devil's Due portion of Whispers that slows your casting speed down, if you're in that stage, you'll want to preemptively cast Fear to try to clip that Fell Burst cast from him early so that you don't have to try to cast it while he's doing it. Now, like I said, I have pretty low haste, so for me, it was a little bit rough, but I was still able to do it. Anytime that the big ad worm is up, make sure that you're throwing Havoc back onto it and continuing to cleave on Tugar, because once you kill Tugar, the fight becomes super trivial and super easy. So as you can see here at the end, I'm just going to go ahead and finish off Tugar. One thing that I really found helpful for myself in this fight was talking to myself as I was doing it. Because you're cycling through 3 different forms of interrupt, a fear, and 2 interrupts. And then you're having to fear Earthquake and doing all these other things. I talked to myself during it, just to say, okay, I feared, I Mortal Coiled here, next one's going to be a Spell Lock from my normal pet. Okay, he casts it, okay, I Spell Locked. Is Mortal Coil back off cooldown? Do I have Grimoire Fellhunter back off cooldown? If so, pick one, tell yourself that you're going to do it so you don't miss the interrupt. Because what can happen is people get a little panicky, they're using keybinds maybe that they're not used to using, and it becomes a little more difficult for them. So, at the end here, once you finish off Tugar, the fight becomes super trivial and super simple. You can see Jormog still has 1 stack of the damage reduction by the time I get to the last phase, so he's taken 10% reduced damage, but that's okay. All he does is cast his kind of Sonic Scream at you and shoots you with these kind of green balls. I really urge you to try to fear him when he's going to cast Sonic Scream. He is susceptible to fear and stuns, which you'll see me do a couple times just to make sure I'm not taking the damage from that. And if you need to, take a second and drain life. Get your health back up. Don't let yourself just rot back down. Right here, he'll go and cast Sonic Scream, and I think I Mortal Coil him here, as you can see, just to stop the cast, so I don't have to stop doing anything, and I don't have to, you know, get spell locked or anything like that. But after you finish off Tugar, you literally just sit here and tunnel into Jormog. It's pretty straightforward. There's not really that much else to it. Make sure throughout the fight that you're not letting yourself cap on shards. Make sure, of course, that you're not letting yourself cap on your Dimensional Rift. And make sure that you're always using your Soul Harvest and Second Potion together on cooldown. And then stunning Tugar, because he is susceptible to stuns as well, with your Infernal when it's up. You also can use your Infernal as a panic interrupt if you want to save it for some reason, but the damage from it is just so powerful, I don't really think it's worth doing that. Jormog is also susceptible to your Infernal stun, as you saw right there, so just finish off the fight, and that's pretty much it, you guys. This one, thankfully, compared to the Affliction one, is not as gear dependent. You know, Sakura Lash doesn't really help you. There's not really anything crazy that's going to help you through this fight. But that's it, you guys. You've just unlocked the new challenge artifact appearance for the Destruction Warlock. This guide was a lot shorter than the other one, so I do appreciate you sticking around for it, of course. Make sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe if you want more content. I do plan to do the Demonology one eventually, but to be quite honest with you, I'm a little intimidated by it. We'll get in there and try it out. Maybe get that finished up next time the Mage Tower is built. But anyways, guys, take care. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.